Hey everyone, I think I recognize most of your names, but I'm Emily Jennings. I'm the Chapter Support and Development Manager for the Southeast for CAI, and I oversee the Chapter Awards program. And we're excited this year to have put together a task force of chapter executive directors to look at the awards program to see what we could tweak and change. And I wanted to thank all of you who took the time to fill out the survey that we sent a couple months back to give us some feedback. And we really tried to take that feedback into account. And we have what we think is a great program. We hope that if you have never submitted before, that we can encourage you to do so. If you haven't submitted in a long time, we hope that you will, give it a chance and do it again. And this is just a great way for the chapter, for the whole chapter to be recognized for the great work you're doing, especially this past couple years. You guys are doing some really innovative and awesome things, and we want to make sure that you have an avenue to be recognized for that. So you're going to hear from each of the task force members today to talk a little bit about what we've done, but I'm going to share my screen with you. Kelly will drop in the chat the PDF of the information that we're talking about. We'll also follow up after this with an email to make sure you have the link to apply and all of the pertinent information. So I'm going to share my screen now. So these are the Chapter Excellence Award guidelines. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with awards, the awards can be applied for between now and this year. The deadline will be February 4th. We use a platform called Open Water, which I will show you guys that here in a little bit to submit your awards. Everything is done digitally. If you have submitted awards before, maybe 4 years ago, you may have remembered you submitted everything by mail. And when Sandra was here, she would have stacks and stacks of awards submissions. And so we feel that Open Water is a godsend, and we are very thankful for it. It's much easier to submit the awards. It's much easier for the judges. It's just easier all around and much more efficient. So I want to go over some of the submission guidelines for chapter awards. So you should identify an existing or new successful program for the chapter. So there's a misconception that this must be a new program that you've just done this year, and that's not true. So this could be a program that you've been doing for many years that you've never received an award for. It could be one that you've revamped. It could even be one that you've applied for an award for 1 year and you didn't, receive one, and you're tweaking the submission and submitting again. So it does not have to be a new program. However, programs that have received national recognition through this program within the last 3 years will not be considered. So if your chapter cannot submit its trade show, if you've won this year, you wouldn't be able to submit next year for that. So we encourage you to gather some key individuals who contributed to the chapter program success and submit the award entry. So myself, as when I was a chapter executive director, I had a couple volunteers that I would lean on to help me. And a lot of times it was like the committee chair or something like that. In this Open Water program, you can actually add collaborators so that they can gain access and help to edit the information. So I would highly suggest to determine who is going to submit the initial award, usually the chapter executive director. It doesn't always have to be, and then they can share with different collaborators. So each chapter may submit one entry and one entry and one chapter program per award. And the program allows you to submit up to 10 supporting documents through the online platform. So no hard copies will be accepted. However, you can, those awesome brochures or whatever you've used, you can include those in your submission, and the judges will have access to those. And believe me, they do look at those. And then you can submit, again, entries into however many categories you would like. So each one award for each chapter size category will be awarded in each achievement area. So chapters scoring 80% or better in 4 out of 5 of the achievement areas will receive an excellence award. So this is a little different than last year. Before it was 5 out of 5. This year we're doing 4 out of 5. Hopefully that will encourage you to submit awards in at least 4 categories. So membership awards are awarded by chapter size based on net growth and best net retention statistics. So those are awards that we also give, and those do not require any submission. Before we move on to the categories for this, do you guys have any questions about the submission guidelines for the Excellence Awards? Or any comments from the task force on this? All right. So next, we are going to go over each of the Excellence Award categories. And we did revamp these. We changed these up a little bit. Some of them we thought were working really well and we kept them. Others we tweaked and added to. I will say, and others from the task force may reiterate this, that, you know, think outside of the box. You know, don't stick to these examples that we give you. If it's something different from these examples, great. Use your best judgment in which category you think it would fit into. So Kate is going to talk a little bit about this first category, which is the chapter operations and sustainability. So this category, and then I'll let Kate talk a little bit about it. It's chapter management or sustainability initiatives and or tools focused on strengthening the internal workings of the chapter. So Kate, do you want to talk a little bit about this category?
Sure. Thank you all for being on. I'm actually just leaving an event that was overlapping this a little bit, but I think this is really important aspect of our jobs. And so thank you for bearing with me while I'm in the car speeding to my office so that I can talk to you all. So there's descriptions on there. I don't know if you're still screen sharing or not. The idea about this particular category was we tweaked it a little bit based on, it was used to be chapter management and like financial development and things like that to enhance the chapter. But we looked at more sustainability. We took a step back and said, okay, how did chapters do through COVID? What are you doing as an executive director or the chapter doing to help sustain, increase financial wherewithal? So there's a list of choices, and they're like Emily said, it's not all black and white. It's either this or nothing at all. These were just samples of topics that we thought this category met. And I don't know if you want to share that with them or not.
Yeah, it's up on the screen, and we
okay.
did a PDF in the chat as well that they can access.
Okay. Well, sorry, I don't have readers on, so I can't see it. So I apologize. Okay. But for example, I think one of the ones was an employee handbook. And I'll use that as an example. I think I have that in there. Some of us probably inherited chapters that didn't have necessarily, maybe they didn't have, but contract worker or a management company, association management company. And now you're a W-2 employee, let's say, for the chapter. And maybe now you've grown and maybe there's somebody else underneath you or you're by yourself, and writing an employee manual. All the processes that go through that you may have had to create from scratch, as an example, things to enhance your operations in general. I mean, like she said, think outside the box. I mean, we're not just event planners. So we're maintaining a business. And so when we looked at this particular category, we were like, okay, we're executive directors. What does that mean? And what do we do day to day that sometimes you just take for granted, but it's something that's very important, that is helping maintain and have the chapter be successful. So that's where we're coming from. So those particular bullet points that are listed there were the ideas that we came up with.
Thank you, Kate. Perfect. And next, Rainey specifically worked on this leadership category here. This one is strategic activities enhancing the mission and vision of the organization and or contribute to the overall growth of the industry. So this could be, I know we're talking to a lot of you about succession planning, board and committee, so something that you're doing with that. Strategic or governance planning. It could be a diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative. Those are just some of the samples of that category. We did have leadership before, so we left that one in place. And then next, we have membership engagement, which I'm going to let Kathy talk a little bit about that.
Hi, everybody. For those of you that have done these awards before, we used to have a membership category and then a member services category. The task force decided to kind of merge those two categories together because some people got confused by the two, but the difference of the two from membership to member services. So we decided to call it membership engagement. Basically, this can be, any way that you're enhancing the overall membership experience for your members and improving the value of CAI. So this could be anything, basically. I use this category as like anything. So it can be if you're doing a new digital magazine, maybe you revamped your membership directory. Maybe you've got a new chapter app. Maybe you have a scholarship program that you would like to highlight, or you had a really innovative speaker this year because of COVID, you were able to get them to do it virtually and you wanted to highlight that. It can also be like a membership survey, or if you're doing a membership campaign to, pull new people in. An ambassador program, that's something that we do in our chapter, or even just some kind of way you focused on a personal touch to your members. Maybe you started calling everybody twice a year, or anything like along those lines, anything different that you're doing to enhance and improve the membership experience.
Great, thank you, Kathy. And then next we have public affairs, and Cal is going to talk about that category. You're on mute, Cal.
Mute button. There you go.
There you
Sorry.
go.
Hi, everybody. So public affairs is becoming increasingly important for chapters and for the industry as we look at what states are doing and the federal government is doing. We're seeing all kinds of very strange things. Much of it starts in California, so we see it first here and then it kind of filters out to the rest of the states, and we apologize for that. But it's important that we do two things. One is that we pay attention to what's going on in government and how it impacts our industry, and we respond to that. And the other part of that is to reach out to constituents who are typically opposed to us, like realtors, and that we have ways of educating them and that we bring them into the fold. So the public affairs category is really structured around rewarding chapters for doing this hard work that's so critical to the future of our industry. And there's examples there, so you can take a look at those. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Cal. And this is a pretty broad category because it involves like the public policy, legislative stuff, as well as like some of you guys are doing community outreach projects, service projects. This could include just public awareness of your organization. So this one is definitely a broad reach, this category is. So, and if you're having trouble deciding which category to submit for or what fits, feel free to reach out to me and we can have a conversation and talk about that. And then the last category is a new category, which is out of the box, and Richard's going to talk about that.
Yes, out of the box. So this category is, it comes from, I will say, conversations that we had during the time of COVID restrictions when we were meeting virtually for a national conference, and just, general conversations, even for water cooler topics and just different meetings. It really comes from, I will say, you all. It comes from ideas that were thrown out when everyone was like, oh, I can't do this anymore, I can't do that. And that one person in that group says, but this is what we're doing. So this category is where you're taking a risk or thinking differently. I will say specifically, an example was, I think a lot of our chapters have golf tournaments, and a lot of people couldn't have their golf tournament last year. So someone actually said, hey, we're doing Top Golf. And then it's like that idea spreads. So it is the idea that you may have that others aren't thinking of. Out of the box doesn't mean that you're the only person in the universe to have this idea. It's that person in your group setting that has this idea when you can't think of something else. And when you share it with someone, it's like, oh, this was awesome. It was well received by the chapter, well received by others. So this is that category where you can kind of take that little thing that you did that turned out to be awesome and blow it up really big and submit it to try and get an award and competing with others. There are some creative examples here, and I think that, can help you along the way. But, it's not that this category, the examples just fit to this category. It can be in different categories, but if you find that it was more so about out-of-box thinking experience, go ahead and put it in this section.
Thank you, Richard. Sorry, I was trying to get myself off of mute. Thank you, Richard. Does anyone have any questions about the categories before we go on to the questions and how the questions will be judged?
Emily, this is Leslie Bloom. I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Leslie.
So some of these are, I realize these are examples, but some of these are things that, for example, our chapter has in place, but they were not initiated just this year. They were initiated, let's say, make this up, say 3 years ago. And so we've never quite known how to handle things like that, and whether if you have something in place and you don't happen to apply for an award in that category that year, have you lost your shot? Or like, I'm going to make mediation program. Well, we have a mediation program, but it's not brand new. So we've never been quite sure how to frame those up in our mind.
Yes, you can submit for that. So as long as the program hasn't won in the past 3 years, you could submit for that. So for instance, like the mediation program, I'm sure you've done tweaks along the way to improve the program. So I would highlight, though, if it's an older program, maybe focus on some of those things that you've done along the way to improve the program.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions regarding that? All right, so this is something that we're really excited about, are the questions. And I hope you are too, after looking at them. And Kate actually came up with these questions after applying for awards for many years. So Kate, do you want me to go read the questions and then you can elaborate on them? Or do you want to set this up?
Yeah, I'm actually stopped and I have my glasses on so I can actually read them.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
So do you want to go over the questions? Answer any questions?
I'll go over them real quick. So anybody who has applied over the years, if you have, and if not, I mean, good, that's good, either way. But we all talked about it on the task force, how a lot of the questions seem to be redundant to some degree. So we took a step back and decided, okay, what would help engage, which I know Richard will talk about, but how to word a question where you feel that you have a potential program that might be a winner, let's say. So that's how these questions were gauged on. And then how do you explain your program so that you get the best out of yourself or your volunteer who's ever submitting for the award. So yeah, describe the program and why it fits in that category. And I know all of us have talked about all these categories, and I know some of you touched on it. Some of these programs we do could meet several things. Like Leslie just talked about mediation. That could be public affairs, that could be member service, it could be you know, anything out of the box. It depends on where you are. So a lot of the questions were to pull out to help you engage. How did the program meet the mission and vision of the chapter and CAI as a whole? We thought that was important because a lot of it was just like, yeah, how did that help your members and stuff? But are you doing programs that are helping enhance and spread the word of CAI, which, and I look as us, even though we're a 501c6, we're still a nonprofit. We all have a mission and a vision, whether it's local or nationals. And are these programs meeting the need and the idea of what CAI is? So that's definitely different than in the past. And then it says, what was the impact of the chapter and its members after completing the program? Growth of the membership financially, public awareness, membership value, better chapter member relationships, etc. So that was another one. So basically you're describing the outcome. Say it was a member retention event and you're going to describe that this program was so fabulous. Okay, that's nice. And it didn't cost a thing. That's even more fabulous. But what was fabulous about it? Did you have 10% membership growth? Was there a net growth? You know, something like that. Did it enhance city relationships? You know, whatever you can think of the impact to your members and CAI. Then another one was, please provide quantifiable data supporting the rationale for success. So this is where you really get into when Emily talked about attaching data, and you can have 10 things. Where, I mean, it helps an award, a judge for the awards if you have hard data, which anybody who's probably submitted most of the time probably has submitted some kind of facts other than go, yeah, it was great and we had lots of attendance. So you definitely want to have the quantifiable results, numbers, spreadsheet, graph, what do you want to say? Even testimony, survey results, you know, something that goes along with whatever information you're providing. You know, like if you had a brochure, show how that brochure, or say it's a sponsorship brochure, for example, and you increased your sponsorship by $100,000 because you had new things in the brochure. Show what it was the previous year to this year, you know, and how that impacted the chapter. And then this last one, based on the results, will the program be a regular part of the chapter programs? And if for the future, why or why not? So basically that question was, is this a one-off, or is this something that is of higher value that you think it enhances the membership for your chapter? You know, so that was why we want to know, are you just doing this because it was a one-time thing and it was super fun and you had the opportunity, or is this really that impactful that you want to do it for long-term? So we just wanted to change up the questions to help you think, and it gives you guys an idea of other things. Like Leslie said, mediation, for example, was 3 years ago. Or say you submitted for the trade show and you didn't win, but now you have education component to your trade show, and how that increased maybe the manager retention of your chapter by having education programs in the trade show. And oh, by the way, yeah, we made a little money, you know, something like things. It's just to help us think. And so that writing doesn't seem so scary. And so that was the idea. It was just to give you an opportunity to think in a different way about your programs and not be afraid to submit for potential awards.
Thank you, Kate. And we want to be very transparent with the judging criteria this year as well. And so award entries are reviewed and scored by 3 judges. A lot of times those judges are volunteers from chapters, association professionals. However, if they are from a chapter who has submitted in a category, they will not be allowed to judge those categories. So just wanted to let you guys know about that. And judges will not score an entry submitted by his or own chapter. I said that. Entries are grouped and evaluated by chapter size and category, and a total of 20 points will be given for each of the questions that we talked about. In previous years, all questions were rated differently, so it was a little difficult to know how much weight each one had. So this one, all of them are 20 points, and then you can see the rubric there. We wanted to provide the judges a sort of a guideline so that scores, if you guys have done chapter awards before, you know that's important because all judges score differently and scores can be kind of all over the place. So we wanted to give a baseline rubric for the judges. Do you guys have any questions before we keep rolling about the questions or the judging criteria?
Dr. Robert from Nevada. I had heard that there are some chapters, and there's no proof of this, but I've heard there are some chapters that actually hire professional companies to do these. Is that permitted?
That's a good question. I have not heard that. I know that sometimes chapters get many eyes to look at them, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I guess that's something we would need to talk about internally because I have not heard that, but it's definitely something that we'll talk about. Thanks for bringing it up.
Thank you.
Any other questions about the judging criteria or questions?
I have another, Dr. Robert. You had mentioned judges for these different categories. How are the judges selected?
So we've used judges that we've used in the past. We've also had people express interest. And as you know, I mean, it's a large organization, so there's lots of opportunity for that. We've also gone outside and done some association professionals, so people working for other associations, not community associations, that are familiar with chapters and the working of chapters and things like that. So we pull from several different areas. And if you ever know of anyone who might show interest or might be good, please send them our way. Any other? Go ahead.
Another one. Will you be discussing the awards for Executive Director of the Year and Rising Star?
We will. Yes, we're going to get to that after this.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on this? All right, great. So we have asked Cal to talk a little bit about how he does this in his chapter. Cal has been submitting awards for many years and has had success. And Cal, I'd like to ask you how you structure your committees around awards and how you get your membership excited about this.
At CAI-CV, we started. The chapter just celebrated this year its 40th year, and my understanding of the history of the chapter, they have submitted awards many times. And about 7 years ago, we revamped our committee structure and started applying for awards. And since then, we've won 26 CAI national awards. And we have 15 committees that compete for awards, and those committees each have about 10 to 11 members, so we have a little over 150 volunteers. And what we do is the board takes our strategic plan, and then from that divvies up 3 or 4 different goals for each of the committees. And during committee training that we do in January every year, the board gives those goals to the committees, and then the committees start working on those goals. And they can develop their own goals. These are just goals to get them started. and to help them understand what the overall strategic plan is for the chapter. And so what we've seen is that the committees get real excited about this and they start competing against each other. And they keep in mind that they're trying to do new and innovative things to really move the industry. And what they get in terms of a response is, so like for our committee volunteer form, you can see that we put the awards there. So every time there's an award, we honor that committee with that award. And that every year we add to those awards so that as we solicit for committee members, the people can see what awards have been won by each committee. And just to give you an example for public affairs, I talked about that earlier. This is an example of what we did. In California, each chapter gives quite a lot of money to our California Legislative Action Committee to pay for to pay for a lobbyist up in Sacramento. And what we were finding is that it was difficult to get the community associations to weigh in. So we developed a one-piece brochure. The committee did this so that they could give it to managers to put in board books so that the board could easily in one sitting decide if they wanted to participate in a buck a door campaign. That's where the associations are asked to give $1 for every household in their association. So it's not a heavy lift. And this brochure just totally put together everything that was available and increased our ability to raise funds tremendously here in California in our chapter. So there's 12 reasons why you should donate to CLAC. There's an update on what was accomplished at the legislature in California. And then it also contains a resolution, a draft resolution that boards can use to memorialize their decision to support CLAC and to put it in their annual budget so they don't have to do this each year. And then of course the form that they fill out, and that's all in one convenient brochure that they can just set right into the board books, and we won an award for that. And then I just want to give you an idea of briefly, can you see the Quorum magazine? So this is our internal magazine. This is the cover from 2020. We won all 5 awards plus 5 excellence awards, so 10 awards altogether. And you can see that we have a nice layout where we talk about each award and give honor to the committee. And that rivalry between the committees has just been fantastic. And so we, from the executive director's perspective, it makes it really easy. And what we do is we have an editor. We would never think to, hire a professional to help us with this. We do have an editor, somebody from our Quorum committee, usually an attorney who will review the award submissions and make sure that, they're worded properly. And the committees do all the work. So hopefully that'll encourage you guys to do it.
Thank you, Cal. I love building the excitement and competition between the committees. I think that's a great idea. And I had people reaching out to me asking if you would be willing to share that plaque buck a door document with them. So if you would be willing, that would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. All right, Kathy Roth-Johnson is going to talk now about some tips and tricks. Well, first of all, are there any questions for Cal on what he shared? All right, Kathy, take it away.
Not a question, but I would like to commend him for an excellent job. That's outstanding. Outstanding.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. So Emily asked me to talk a little bit about some tips and tricks that I use when I'm writing the awards. Our chapter made a strategic plan, I don't know, maybe 7-8 years ago to try our best to submit in all 5 categories, which was kind of hard at first. But when you start getting the committees on top of it and thinking about things that we can do to kind of make ourselves stand out, it makes it easier and easier each year. So some of the things that we've done is I like to use visuals. So if you have a great brochure, maybe you have a great marketing piece or pictures from an event, definitely add all those to the attachments, you know, anything you can do to make yourself stand out. For those people that are visual learners like me, you want to see some more than just, you know, all the writing. So I try to include as much of that as possible for every award submission, because I just think that just adds more to what you're doing. Just like Kate said, you provide the data. There's always data there. You know, tell them how many new members you got from the membership campaign and show them all the spreadsheets, but don't make it too complicated for yourself either. You don't have to have, you know, tons of information. You just got to get down to the nitty gritty. One thing that I like to tell my committee people is that tell the story, because the judges don't know your chapter. They don't know what you've done. They don't understand exactly who you are in your chapter. So tell them like what the vision was, what the details are, help them understand and make them feel like they were there at the event or they were part of it. I think that's a really important piece, because like I said, like they're reading several of these. I don't even know how many like they're reading, but you want to make sure that they kind of feel a part of it. Like Emily had stated, resubmit the following year. So let's say you had a fantastic trade show, you did all these new different things and you submitted last year and you didn't win and you were really just upset about it. Resubmit it next year, because maybe you just had a lot of competition the year before and maybe what you did was still fantastic and award worthy. It just wasn't enough that year. So try to resubmit it and maybe add to it. I've done that a couple of times and we've gotten awards from that. Another thing that I do is, well, like when I first started 13 years ago, I would see everybody up on stage and I would think, oh my gosh, like we're never going to be up there. We don't do anything that's award worthy. And if you're thinking that way, think, oh, like we're not really doing anything, stop that, because you're doing amazing things. And don't be afraid to try and fill out an application and tell somebody about the amazing things you're doing. Even if you don't win, every chapter is doing something different and innovative. You are, I know it. Because I talked to almost all of these CDs. So I know you guys are doing fantastic things, and just don't be afraid to put yourself out there and try to submit, because I did that for years and I thought, oh, we're not doing anything good. But we were. And so the more you start doing it, the better you get. I actually also, a huge thing that we do is we edit everything. We do the spell check, we proofread. I have a proofreader. Don't forget to do that. That's such a huge, important part. I don't know if the judges take off points if things are not proofread and spell check and everything else, but definitely do that. It doesn't take much to do that. There's so many different programs out there that will help you with that. I also set aside some time the second week of January. I set aside a couple of days on my schedule to kind of brainstorm ideas and kind of really focus on the awards those days. I also collaborate with other people that helped with those particular programs or events or things that you're submitting for, because sometimes they have different ideas that maybe you didn't think about. So we kind of collaborate together on a Word document. I don't collaborate over open water. We do it all through either like a Google Doc or a Word document. And then I kind of fine tune it, and then I'm the one that always submits it off. But after you collaborate with like whether it's a committee working on it, give it a couple days before you submit it, because sometimes you have like more ideas if you kind of like take a break from it. And sometimes you can just add more to it, or you can fine tune some details. I've learned that over the years. Like, don't be so quick to send it off because you might have forgot an important piece that you wanted to include. Those are my good ideas. That's all I've got. But like I said, definitely try to submit in all 5 categories. If you can, you'd be surprised at the things that you guys are doing that you might not even realize are really award worthy. So there's so many different things that every chapter is doing. So just, I encourage everybody to try and submit at least in one category. And if anybody needs help, I'd be happy to help proofread or give you guys tips if anybody needs help too. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Kate, go ahead.
So hi all, I'm actually at my desk. I think too, like what Kathy was saying, writing, it can be difficult, and I know Richard's going to talk about that. But one of the things, we're always so busy. Some of us have staff in our office, some of us are working from home and maybe have children learning at home, or a husband or a significant other is running around, or you have dogs barking and things like that. The best thing to do is write when it's quiet. I mean, there isn't a lot of time in your day sometimes where it's actually quiet, but to keep a flowing thought, or write for a little bit, answer one question, put it down, then look at the next question the next day, and then also review what you wrote. That will help too. So it doesn't seem like you have this big long 5 questions and you're like, oh my gosh, I got to answer these 5 questions. Just break it up too. That will help, not be so scary.
Can I add something?
Yeah, go ahead, Cheryl.
I just want to reiterate what Kathy was saying about the 5 categories, because we made a goal to submit in all 5 also. And in some years, maybe we have 3 or 4 really strong ones that we're really confident in and proud about. And then that 5th category is like maybe a little bit of a stretch, but we really wanted to submit in all 5. And so many times that 5th category stretch is the one that we end up winning, shockingly. So it was better than we thought as a program, and maybe how it stacks up against the competition. That's how it, plays out. But that's happened to us a number of times. So it sort of forces you, if you want to submit in all 5 or pick 3 or 4 or whatever, if it forces you to dig deep and really think about what you're doing, sometimes it's better than you think.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Cheryl, for that
I
feedback.
agree.
Yeah, and so thank you guys. Some of the things that I'm excited about we're going to do this year is I'm going to have a training with the judges ahead of time instead of just sending them an email and the information. So to be able to answer the questions that they have, I think that will be really helpful in their understanding. And there's also a place for them to write comments about the submissions. And so I'm going to encourage them to use that. And then we will share those with you afterwards so that you can get the feedback that the judges are sharing. So that's a new thing that we're going to do this year. I also want to share with you before we give Richard the opportunity to talk is that we have tweaked the awards categories, the size categories for chapters as well. So you can see on my screen that I'm sharing, we've pushed all of the categories about 10 members, because obviously everyone is shooting to get to the largest chapter. And so we have actually separated that largest chapter category out. So 1201 plus is going to be a new chapter size category. And CEDs, we sent you the link to vote if you were in that category. And so the new name for that category is going to be extra large, not to be confused with very large. So you top 1201 plus are going to be extra large now. And so if you were competing in the very large category, you know that is one of our largest categories. And you may have been winning when you were submitting in the large, but now in very large, there's a lot of people submitting. So we think that that will be helpful there. And so we're excited about that. Do you guys have any questions before I share about the CED of the year and Rising Star, and then let Richard take us the rest of the way? All right. So I will send this out after the call as well, but this is the right criteria for the Chapter Executive Director Awards. So these, we want to be clear that these are separate from the Chapter Excellence Awards. The Chapter Excellence Awards are judged by the judges. These Chapter Executive Director Awards are determined by CAI's Board of Trustees. So we call for nominations every year for this. And so this is the call. This is the starting of the call, and then we will send this out and make sure you all receive this. So nominations that are submitted by you are submitted to the National CAI Board of Trustees for consideration, and they determine the winner for these. The Board of Trustees requests staff input with emphasis on the CED's collaboration with headquarters and fellow CEDs. So I want to urge you, I'm not going to read each of these to you. You can read kind of what they're looking at in these categories, but there is a big emphasis on the CED's collaboration with headquarters as well as their fellow CEDs, sharing with them, collaborating with them as well. For the chapter executive director of the year nomination, should I just say CED of the year? That's much easier to say. Generally speaking, the CED of the year would have previously been awarded the Rising Star, although it is not a requirement. I know there's been some questions surrounding that, so I wanted to clarify that. And then with the CED Rising Star nomination, the CED must have been in their position for a minimum of 2 years. And this award may be awarded only once per CED. So these submissions can be submitted to myself, and I put my email address there, and we'll make sure that we share that with you as well. So we encourage president-elects who are on this call to submit these awards for your CEDs. We're going to be making sure we announce this on the president call in January as well, and really talking it up to them. So do you guys have any questions about this?
Real quick, is this a freehand, or will there be a form and a guidance provided as to what you're looking for?
This is a freehand. This here is the guidance. We're asking, you know, don't give us an essay. 300 words, you know, would be perfect. But it is, yeah, based on this here, you'll write your submission. Good question, Chris. Rachel?
Yeah, so I guess my only concern with this is that it's not really about that year. Right, for the CED awards, it's not really about what that ED did in that year, unless I am missing something.
Crystal, do you want to talk about that?
Rachel, I wouldn't say that it's not what's happened in this year. It's kind of, in a lot of cases, especially, well, with the Rising Star, what I would say we look to when we make recommendations to the Board of Trustees are people that have stepped up in that year from previous years. For the CED of the year, I would say it has something to do with this year, but it is kind of a culmination over time. So yes, we're going to look at accomplishments and working with other CEDs and headquarters staff, but in most cases, it's been kind of over a period of time. And part of that is frankly, we would love to award everybody an award, but when you're looking at 55 plus CEDs and you have to pick one, like we end up like, oh God, there's like 5 people we'd like to give it to. Who do we give it to? Who do we recommend as our top pick this year? And then we'll look at the next person, you know, hopefully next year. There's just, it's like when you guys do awards, there's oftentimes more people than you can actually give an award to. Does that make sense?
It does make complete sense. And I completely understand from having us, you know, doing awards and everything like that. I just feel like it's more, from what I've seen, it's more of a legacy award. Like it's more given out to like, there's a certain tenure associated with it, at least in my mind. I know it's not written out there. But yeah.
It's certainly not the intent. I mean, I think there have been a couple of examples of people that we perhaps have had on the list. And, you know, we've had some recent retirements, several actually this year. So, you know, in those cases, we may be like, well, they're on the list. If we're ever going to give it to them, yes, it may be this year. So there are those circumstances, but it's certainly not intended to be like, this is your swan song lifetime achievement type award.
Okay, I understand. It just, that's what it feels like. That's
Not
what it feels like.
intended to feel that way at all.
Were
It's
these
just
discussed
so
with the
many
committee,
worthies.
or was it just the other ones?
These were discussed as well with the committee.
Okay.
Yeah, we did get feedback, and then I took some of the feedback and wrote this up. But yeah, these were not looked at as intently as the others.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We've asked Richard to talk a little bit about writing tips. So Kathy kind of said, well, I don't know if if judges take points off for grammar or punctuation or any of that. No. However, having read things before, it's easier to read things that are well written, that have correct punctuation, good grammar. They flow a lot easier. So Richard, we're going to turn it over to you to share some tips. So Richard was actually the founding member of the Writing Society at his college. And so we're going to let Richard share some tips.
Hey, thank you. Yes, it's been a long time since then, but it's still a part of my life that is important as far as writing, because not only business writing, but any other format of writing, and you will be surprised how it becomes a lost art in a sense, because when I talk to, let's say, 18 and younger, and I look at what they write, I'm just blown away and how they write, but they are the text generation. But for us overall as full-time working individuals, we get busy, especially if you are a solo CED. You may run into just not having the time and sometimes not having the focus to put into writing. There have been times where it was like, oh, can you submit for this? And I was like, I just don't have 250 words to give you after responding to 500 emails throughout the day. However, there are ways to kind of cut through and kind of help you out in just getting your mind to a point that you can write. And also just to add about how this part came about for me to present, I'm also an MBA student currently. And I had to blow the dust off some of the tips and tricks I used to use to get through my undergrad. And I was like, oh yeah, here we are. I'm back to writing again. What did I do then that I am not doing now? And Microsoft Word has been, of course, my best friend, which I'm sure a lot of you use Microsoft Word as one of your programs. All right, so Microsoft Word has added a lot of programs just to help busy person out. I compare it to our cars now. Now we have so much going on when we drive. Our cars have to think in part for us. And the same happens with our writing as well, and just our workday. One of the cool features that I know that PC computers have had for a few years now, but Microsoft has really done a good job of adding it to the Microsoft Word program, is the dictate function, which if you use this, hold on. Oh no. Okay, so it's not working today for some reason, but normally I think it's because we're using Zoom also. But normally what happens, I will say with the dictate function, with my microphone to the Word document, it will start recording everything that I say. It will start writing out the words for me. And it is a very easy format to use. It gets harder depending on your accent, which I've heard that people say I don't have one, but the computer says I do. And often I will say one of the trigger words on the computer that it always has an issue with is the word and, A-N-D. It will spell out the name and also if I use in, like going into something, it is often putting and instead. It does it so much that now when I do voice to text, I just go ahead and say in where I need to say and. And so it's just, when you get into it, it helps a lot. And it gets your first thought out of your mind onto the paper. I'm not sure how many of you have experienced standardized testing, but they often tell you go with your first answer because it's probably the right one. But in writing, go ahead and get your first thought out because that is probably the one that you were most passionate about, and then go back and edit your writing. And that is often what has been so helpful to me in using the program. The other part, and I will pull up my other document for this since the voice to text wasn't working. The other part that you can use after you have written that out, it will read it back to you, which if you go to, let's see here, review, there is the read out loud. So this helps you to hear mistakes that you will have in your writing, which I need to see if you all can, again, because we're in Zoom, it won't do it. So basically there's a computer voice that pops up and hold on, there's a lot going on. There we go, stop it. There we go. So what it does, it just reads it back to you, and it is so helpful in hearing mistakes, wrong words, wrong endings. And long as you're following along, it is so helpful. I actually use this program to help read through certain things for school, just because I'm not the most disciplined reader. You can give me 20 pages and I'm just stuck on page 1 sometimes because my mind is somewhere else, especially if you're a full-time worker. But it helps because it reads it back to you. You hear mistakes, you're able to fix your mistakes. And it's just helpful because sometimes you may not catch everything in trying to proof it yourself, just reading it yourself, having something else to read it to you helps. And one of the other cool features that I'm not even sure if it's gonna work, let's hope it does, is the editor, which if you click the editor, right, says it's finished. I got to move some bars around. So it goes through and it reads your paper and it checks for a few things. And what you'll see are these pop up and it'll give you recommendations on where you can change, like there's a spacing issue with the period. So now that's fixed. You can go here and it's changing words instead of can't, cannot. So it's helpful in that process, especially if you're not a strong editor. Not everyone is a writer. Some people are math people. Some people are very artistic. We just all have this experience in writing and we all write differently. Some of us are very business oriented. Some of us are very poetic. I am more so on the poetic side. I would say when the Writers Society started, it was actually a poetry society. And then we brought in other members so we could grow that were writers. And the beauty was I got to experience different writers and also just different writing styles. But in business writing, there are things that we do. I will say I am guilty of being a dreadful writer or a moody writer or just a blunt writer. I will say going back to some of my early days in working, I was the one, if you had sent me an email, I would probably just reply yes. That was me back in the day. You could have said a million questions and at the end I'm just like yes, because that is all you needed to know. In the development of that writing, I've learned how to break it out, respond well, and also just improving the positivity in my writing. And if you see here at the first little bit, it's positive writing. That is just taking a few notes on how to bring positivity to what you say. These are a few examples. State what you can do instead of what you can't do. And the negative part was, of course, I'm booked tomorrow morning, so can't review the proposal until 2 p.m. The more positive side, I open tomorrow at 2 p.m. to review the proposal. So instead of just, being like, oh, I can't, or even I'm sorry, can be a negative in your writing. And some of us may say, I'm sorry, or I apologize. I will say I've started to incorporate, stop using I'm sorry, but like, oh, I'm sorry for the late reply. No, instead I say, thank you for waiting for my reply. It changes it. It doesn't put too much blame on people, but it still gives you a sense of ownership that, you were late in replying, but it doesn't have to be overall a negative. And then moving from that, just clear and concise writing really does make a difference. Because sometimes, especially if you were that college student that just hated writing papers, you probably fluffed your papers a lot. And that is sometimes something that sticks with us for a while. We will add a lot of fluff just to make it look fuller, to make it look just amazing. But when you actually read it, it may not do the same thing. And in that, I do have 2 paragraphs here for a cover letter that I am actually currently rewriting for someone. And to get this back on. Oh, sorry, everyone. The Zoom program has other things around. There we go. All right. So in this cover letter, these are actually a paragraph from the center of the cover letter where I just took and reinvented what that person was saying. I will say I wanted to pick a specific sentence out of this. But there is basically, I will say with this, I took it from being just I, myself, and I tried to remove some of those words from the writing, because I will say one thing, my middle school English teacher taught me, stop using I so much, stop referring to yourself. And that is actually a skill to develop, and how to use I without using I, how to direct to yourself without directing to yourself. So I will say the first paragraph, I drive to increase company exposure and improve the brand to its constituents. I pride myself on the ability to enhance client relationships and build retention. So in just reading those two sentences, you might, as someone who's trying to hire someone, you might just get tired of reading it. Versus where I rewrote it in the second paragraph, I push to increase an organization's exposure to the community and improve the brand to its constituents. This stems from an ability to enhance client relationships and build retention. You removed a lot of the I's, and now it's a sentence about I with a supporting sentence about still your ability to do the job. Now, this is just saying, read what you write and see where you can improve, see where it can have a better flow. I will even say, see where you can make it a little more poetic if you can. But writing doesn't have to be scary. It's just learning to direct what you're writing to what you're writing for. Even in the first sentence of these two paragraphs, your company can benefit from my experience in marketing and brand development. I changed that because the person is applying for a nonprofit marketing job, and it's your organization can benefit from my experience in marketing and nonprofit supervision. So since you're applying for a job that is solely for the overseeing marketing, most definitely you have to sell that point that that is what you're doing. And the same thing happens with our awards, just making sure that you're writing to that specific category, because yes, you may have something that is overall that can go in all of the categories, but how do you narrow it down to be that public affairs versus that membership engagement? How do you do that? And that is just taking the time. I will say, if the first paragraph of what I wrote here was my first thought, it would have been what I have wrote, and then I would have went back and read it and seen where I can improve it. And it is just taking the time to read what you're doing. I know in our life we get really busy and it gets hard. And I will say, even sometimes rereading this and using the voice to text program, and I've done this before, I have taken something I've written, rewrote it through voice to text, and found out that in speaking it out, it does not sound that great. So it's just taking that time to review. And also, don't forget, as just the CED or the president, it should be a village and not just you. Don't be afraid to, if you as a CED send it to your president to review, your vice president, president-elect, let them review it, see what they can offer to you. But there are just ways of really doing this. And I will say, I was telling the group earlier before we got started, because I am a master's student, I had a paper that I wrote, and I will say it did take a while because it was my final. I edit through almost 3 different ways. My reading it, Microsoft Word reading it and reading it back to me and editing it. And then lastly, it goes through Grammarly, which is a free program which you can add if you have Google and some other programs. And when it got to Grammarly, there were no mistakes. And I really, I was very happy because Grammarly generally keeps me in check on a lot of my style edits. And there were no mistakes. I am happy to say I got an A on that paper. So I will say, you know, writing doesn't have to be scary. Even if you're not a strong writer, there are other tools that will help you through. And as we get busier and Microsoft continues to add these programs, it is just something that is helpful in trying to format your life a little better. And again, you know, Kathy had brought up, there are also other programs if you're group writing, because not everyone has Microsoft where it connects to each other. Don't be afraid to use Google if you're group writing. Don't be afraid to use other programs, because I think even Teams, you can do the same thing. I haven't used Teams that much, but you know, just use your technology to your advantage. And even I will say, for me, I'm a horrible speller. I am horrible at spelling. But when I can't think of how to spell a word, my phone is my friend. I will say the word into my phone and boom, I have the spelling of it. And the same happens with these voice to text programs. Especially, it will start to get used to your writing. One thing, and I actually don't have anything that I can think of that I write regularly, but my Microsoft program has started to learn my writing. And so when I use certain phrases, it finishes it for me, just how your email programs may do that. And it actually scared me the first time I did it, because I was like, when did I write this? I wasn't paying attention. I was looking at something and typing, and I was like, when did I write this? It had did it for me. And so it's just, it doesn't have to be scary. And I know it's like beginning of the year when we're submitting awards and we're trying to get everything started. But even Kate said, just take that time. I am most definitely a mood writer. And that comes from my poetry days. I have to be in a mood to really write something. And it could even be, I know that I have this assignment due, but I'm gonna have to walk around for like an hour and get myself settled after work and cut on the TV, let my brain drain from what I was doing before I start doing this other form of writing. And, you know, and even Kate had even said, you know, try writing something once and then going to the next thing and coming back to it. You'd be surprised how you get ideas from the second question that you can apply to the first question. But I will say most definitely, you know, just don't be afraid of writing. Use your tools that you've always used, blow the dust off of them, because the things, I will say, English, though it does change a little bit, it doesn't really change that much. It's just what you apply to it. And you know, I've heard people say they are scared to write. I am one, not really so scared to write, but when it comes down to it, all of us can do it. It's just knowing that there's a process to writing in order to make it look more perfect. But I hope that everyone found this a little helpful. It's just these little simple things that can help you get through it. And I'll add one last piece. As a newer CED, I have not applied for an award. So I do challenge all of you to apply, because I will be applying this year. Even though my chapter did win an award and I was on stage when we were in Vegas, that was done with the previous CED. But I am excited to try for this for the first time, and even being on the task force, just being that outsider that could add a little something to it and get that experience. You know, it's an amazing thing. I will say being on stage there was something that gave me the drive to want to do this and to have this experience. So don't miss out. Don't worry about what people say or the hearsay behind it. You got to do it to suit you. And if it's something dynamite, make it dynamite. Don't just let it be the gunpowder on the ground. Make it that dynamite. And when you win it and it goes boom, then you get to celebrate. So don't miss out on this opportunity to apply. But that is all I have on writing for today.
Yay. Thank you, Richard. Thank you so much. With those tips, no one will have to pay anyone to write their submissions. So thank you, Richard. We will also include the document, hopefully, if it's okay with you, Richard, that you've had, we can include that with the follow-up materials as well. Kelly did put in the chat the submission page for awards. I would just encourage you to get on the same page with the CED president-elect, because I know you're all on this call, to make sure who will be the ones submitting those awards in order to not have duplicates. Well, with that said, Cal has also shared the Buckador brochure in the chat as well, so be sure to pull that off of there. We will have this recording available next week. And are there any last minute questions before we go? All right, well, I'm here to answer any questions you have. And I hope you guys have a great rest of the day and happy submitting for awards. We'll see you guys soon.
If you have any questions, please contact a member of the Chapter Relations team or email chapterlearning@caionline.org.